Hello, this is Johnny Cycles of CyclesGaming.com, bringing you another edition of cards from Murders at Karlov Manor that I want to play in my commander decks. Today I'll be discussing my mono red Purphoros bronze blooded deck. This is my website, by the way, CyclesGaming.com. Please check it out. Watch my videos on YouTube and subscribe. All the clicks are appreciated. So, mono red Purphoros bronze blooded is one of my all-time favorite commander decks. It has the potential for a turn 1 kill against a single opponent. You can read all about that by clicking this link here. We basically are just trying to cheat in big fatties and swing and get value out of them entering the battlefield or leaving the battlefield, or cheating them in and not having them and avoiding the trigger of Purphoros bronze blooded. If you're not familiar with the commander, see if this, so he is 7/6 for 5, indestructible. Other creatures you control have haste, and you pay 3, and you can put a creature or an artifact creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, and it gets sacrificed at the next end step. Super fun card, and it's so easy to build around, and you can easily build a budget version as well. There's so many big fatties out there in Commander that are going to be under $1. I've yet to do it, but it's on my list. All right, so cards that should be included for Murders at Karlov Manor. My first draft of this, I didn't have any, actually. But reading Anzrag's Rampage, I just really like it, and I think it has a lot of upside in the deck. So it's 5 mana sorcery. It says, destroy all artifacts you don't control, then exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts that were put into graveyards from the battlefield this turn. You may put a creature card exiled this way onto the battlefield. It gains haste to return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So it's a great way to answer your opponent's artifacts, mana rocks, treasure tokens, or whatever, while also digging through our deck for a threat and getting a single attack out of it. But the benefit of, or the beauty of it, is that then that creature that we do find off of Anzrag's Rampage goes back to our hand, so that we can then do it all again with our commander the next turn and cheat it into play. So let's say we get a Blightsteel Colossus, maybe our best option. We swing in, maybe we kill one opponent with the infect damage, and then it goes to our hand the next turn. We cheat it in with our commander and kill our second opponent with that infect damage. We also have a lot of ways to abuse the creature that comes into play, and whether or not we really want it to go back to our hand. Depending on what we draw and what the board state's like, we can, with Industrial Advancement, sacrifice the creature instead and then spin the wheel again and hope to get a better creature. Conjurer's Closet, we can just choose to keep it on the battlefield if it's has an attack trigger or combat damage trigger, and we have other things to do with our mana the next turn. And then with Mirror Works, if we hit an artifact creature, it's almost certain that we're going to want to copy it unless it's a legendary artifact. So we have a lot of built-in shenanigans to take advantage of this type of effect that's attached to Anzrag's Rampage, which is the real reason that it's going to be should be included. Some artifact hate on top of synergizing really nicely with what our deck is trying to do. The drawbacks of this card, though, are that 5 mana is a lot. Even though you're not going to really want to run it out probably in the early turns of the game, you'll want to wait until there's a bunch of artifacts out. The second big problem is the card says exile the cards from the top of your library, and that's it. It doesn't say put them on the bottom of your library after you pick your creature. So it's possible that against 3 opponents, if they have the right cards, like a Smothering Tithe or a Dockside Extortionist or the new commander Tace Opponent Oligarch, which I just played against last night, there could be 30-40 artifacts on the battlefield, and of course that's awesome value, but depending on the board we're at in the game, it's possible we're exiling most of our deck. Unlikely we'll exile all of it, but it is possible. So you got to be careful. We wouldn't cast it into a situation where we're exiling our entire deck, of course, but that's one of the drawbacks that makes it a dead draw. There's also situations where there just won't be very many artifacts out, if any. Sometimes there might be 1 or 2 mana rocks. It's not going to gain a lot of value, and it's a dead draw when what we really need is like a sweeper or some way to answer the board full of creatures that are attacking us or planeswalkers that are bothering us. So I went through and already looked through what I'm going to cut, unlike some of the other articles. So I'm going to take out Blood Moon to make room for this card. Why? Blood Moon attacks people's mana. People don't like that in Commander. It also can hurt us. We play a lot of non-basic lands ourselves that we want to get value out of. So in the could be included list, Case of the Crimson Pulse. It's a 3-mana enchantment. It's the static ability when it first comes into play. When this case enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw 2 cards. To solve it, you have no cards in hand. And then solved, once it's solved, at the beginning of your upkeep, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. So this reminds me a lot of Sarkhan, the Dragon Speaker's Ultimate, that I got to do at least once, that I remember way back when he was standard legal. And one of the drawbacks of the card, once it's solved, is that you may end up with 3 cards in your hand that you can't cast, and that happened with me with Sarkhan, the Dragon Speaker. However, drawing 3 cards a turn is still totally worth it and super powerful, so it should pull you far enough ahead in the commander to at least catch you back up and win you the game, or turn the corner and win the game, or just put the game away. So it's super powerful effect. And having played this deck a lot, there are times when we flood out with mana and we just need to find action, or we have a lot of we've cheated in our big creatures and we just don't have any cards in hand. And that's one reason why we play the cards we do already, things like Fable the Mirror Breaker, Seasoned Pyromancer, the One Ring, Jessica's Will. These are all ways to refill our hand. We play maybe almost 10 cards that will gain us some amount of card advantage, or some form of card advantage. We could totally find room for Case of the Crimson Pulse without it really weakening the deck or making it less consistent. It would give us some redundancy on card draw. And I mean, writing about it, thinking about it, I really want to test it out. It's one of the best things about this case, and one of the things that makes it different than the other cases that I've written about, is I don't think we need to judge this case based on its first and static effect, right? It's not a static effect, first of all. It's a ETB effect, but the other cases that you have to kind of jump through some hoops to solve, there are situations where you're not going to be able to jump through those hoops, or it takes you too long. Whereas with this card, the hoop is just simply playing Magic. You're playing out your hand. So you're doing what you're setting out to do already, which is playing the cards in your hand, and then you solve the case, and then suddenly you're drawing 3 cards a turn. So I think this one is very powerful. One of the best cases. I think it's going to see a lot of play in red aggressive deck and standard. It might actually see some play in modern if the red aggressive decks make a comeback. Mono red, I should say. Creature strategies. All right, next, connecting the dots. This is like a Bowmat Courier effect, but on an enchantment, which I think makes it really powerful. It's 2 mana, which is a plus. It can come down really early. That's its ceiling. It comes down on turn 2. We start executing our game plan, which is just cheating in big fatties and attacking. We start exiling cards. And when we run out of cards, we sacrifice this, get them all, and get all those cards back to our hand. I think that's a really powerful effect. The drawback, of course, is that we do have to attack. And there may be situations where we are not in a position to attack. We don't have the creatures to attack, or we draw this on turn 10 when we really need to draw something like Jessica's Will just to draw more cards to find an answer rather than jump through these hoops to get cards exiled by attacking. Or we might just want to be drawing one of our dragons or one of our creatures that does damage when it enters the battlefield, or does like a Balefire Dragon, which will wipe the board, our opponent's board. So yeah, I mean, in a late game, I think this could be a dead draw for us. I think it will trigger anytime a creature attacks. So if we are attacking with 5 creatures in the late game, we'll immediately exile 5 cards. And we could have the mana right then to sack it and get it back to our hand. So it's possible that even in the late game, it would be a live draw. I just think that if we're already attacking with 5 creatures, given the kind of creatures we're playing, we're probably already winning. Still, I mean, it totally could go on the deck. I would just take out some of my other card draw to make room for this. I wouldn't take out one of my finishers or ram spells or anything like that. Krenko's Buzz Crusher, man, I love this card. I've talked about it a lot already with my Omnath decks. It's just a really fun, powerful card. 4 mana, 4/4 flying trample. I'm just in love with the stats. And the fact that it then blows up problematic non-basic lands for each of our opponents. We can blow up one of our own, for instance, if we want to go, I don't know, need another red source for mana fixing, but we don't have to, which is really nice. So unlike our Omnath deck, where we probably will be wanting to blow up a land, here we may not. One of our own lands, that is. But yeah, just super fun, super powerful, flexible card. Does a lot of what you want in Commander. You want to have ways to target problematic lands without it being universal land destruction to make everybody angry. Get rid of that Cabal Coffers or Nick those Shrine to Nix. And maybe I'm in the minority even with that. I don't have a problem with people playing Ghost Quarter or Field of Ruin in Commander. I think it's perfectly fine. Everyone wants to have their fun and abuse lands, and I don't think that we should just sit back and let that happen, right? Like, it's okay to interact with your opponent. It's okay to slow down their shenanigans or synergies. That's part of Magic. Anyway, So yeah, I could see finding room for this card. It's nice on curve too for 4 mana. I mean, there'd be games where we really just want to cast this for 4 mana as a blocker or as an early attacker, depending on what we have going on. And also remember that it's with our commander. Granted, it's just 1 mana less to cheat it into play, but we can cheat it into play at instant speed. So we can do it on our opponent's turn during combat to ambush an attacker, but also blow up a land. So the flexibility that it comes with it with our commander is nice. And could be included section is Incinerator of the Guilty, the only mono red dragon. 6 mana is just a lot. It does have Tremble, which is essential for making this card even into the might could be included section. So for 6 mana, flying, trample, whenever Incinerator of the Guilty deals combat damage to a player, you may collect evidence X. When you do, Incinerator of the Guilty deals X damage to each creature and each planeswalker that player controls. So I like this card a lot. Obviously, I love dragons. I think it's a little overcosted, and there's a few too many conditions to make it what we need it to be. We already played things like Balefire Dragon. That does a better job of this for creatures. We play things like Begarden, Hellkite, Inferno Titan, Drakuseth, Maw of Flames. These are all ways that when creatures enter the battlefield, they can kill our opponent's creatures. We have a lot of effects like this. And the reason why I guess those effects are just ETBs, or combat damage dealt, but they don't have the additional cost of exiling cards from your graveyard to make it happen. So that's one reason I don't think this is playable compared to the other ones, and why it's in the might could be included. The other reason is when the times we need a sweeper is when we've gotten our commander down, we're about to get overrun, we want to cheat in one of our big fatties that does damage to our opponent's creatures. And that's usually early in the game, like turn 5, turn 6, and we may not even have anything in our graveyard at that point. So we could have this be our one big threat, our one big card that we're counting on answering our opponent's board by cheating it into play on a turn 5 or 6 and not have a single card in the graveyard, or just have a land or something small and not be able to actually wipe the board. So that's the other reason I don't think I'll make room for this card. However, if you do want another beater, if 6 mana isn't, it's on curve, it's not that much. We do play some higher mana costed creatures for sure. So if you just want to have like another beater that is sort of mid-rangey costed and has a lot of upside, then I could see finding room for this in your mono red Purphoros bronze-blooded deck. So that's it. That's all the cards from Murders at Karlov Manor that I think could, and might could be included in my Purphoros bronze-blooded commander deck. Let me know in the comments what you think of my list, and if I'm leaving anything off, which cards you're most excited about, and if which cards you definitely want to add to your Purphoros bronze-blooded deck. All right, as always, this is Johnny Cycles with cyclesgaming.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.